I've been seeing a lot of videos like this one pop up on my news feed, or articles like this one saying, like Warren Buffett saying that home ownership is not a good investment. Other people saying the American dream is trash, home ownership is overrated. And if you just look at these headlines, many of you would just be renting forever because you don't read the details. But they leave out very important perspectives and some easy ways for you to know if home ownership will make sense for you. So I want to talk about some of those things today, and I want you to have like an easy yardstick. I'm going to talk about 4 things that I want you to evaluate to see if you should be a homeowner. I'm Shaheedah Hill, getting you over the hill to home ownership and helping you confidently buy your first home. Most people that are comparing home ownership and saying that it's not a great investment are generally comparing it to buying stocks or investing in the stock market as the alternative to buying a house, and saying that the stock market on average has given a 10% return per year. So basically, if you take the money that you were going to spend on your down payment and all of that, your closing costs, and you invested that money, you would get 10%, and then you can invest more, and then the investment overall would be higher in the stock market than it would be with your home over the years. At least that's what is talked about in the Warren Buffett video. But a house is not just an investment, and you have to be very, very clear. If you're just comparing it, I'll be investing in this, investing with that, you can't live in your 401k. You cannot live in your Roth IRA, your mutual funds, your index funds. You can't live in those. So unless it's like, just stay with your parents for the rest of your life because that's going to be free or much less expensive than buying a house, we're not comparing two of the same types of things, right? So I want to make sure that you are clear that that's what they're talking about. They're talking about you shouldn't be buying a house because investing, you could make more money by investing. But for most of us, we need a place to live and we need some shelter as one of the basic human needs. But I would say that you don't need a particular type of shelter. Some people are buying a home above their means, and then that stops them from investing. So I'm going to go over 4 things I really want you to evaluate before you purchase a home, because in addition to providing shelter, home ownership provides stability, a community, freedom, and independence that you're not going to find when you're living in somebody else's property. Many people experience this during the pandemic when their landlords or their property owners either raised their rent significantly or just, ended their leases. And these are properties that they've lived in for years and years and years. They ended their leases and they had no place to go. And they had to find other housing that was much more expensive than what they were used to. So I want you to know that home ownership at least comes with some more control of your destiny. Let's go over those 4 things. Is renting a home where you live comparable to buying a home? So if rent, for example, is $3,000 on average where you live, and that's just, the going rate, and home ownership would be about the same, $3,000, then you should probably be looking into purchasing a property. Now, you want to, because if you're renting, it's the same, $3,000 to about $3,000, at least some of that money is going toward the equity in that home or paying off that home. And you also have the opportunity for the home just to be going up in value as prices increase or the market changes where you live. So if they're very comparable, you should be thinking about it. Now, if they're not, if renting in your area is $1,000 and buying a home would cost you $2,000 or $2,500, then that might not make sense for you, because you have to look at the opportunity cost between renting and home ownership. That's about $1,000 to $1,500. What could you be doing with that savings? You could be investing that money, and then that return is likely going to be higher through the investment than buying a house and then hoping it goes up in value over time. So if there's a big difference where you live between renting and buying a house, then you may want to rent longer, or you may want to, if you really want to be a homeowner, you may want to look into moving somewhere else where housing is more affordable. Number two, do you still have money to invest after your mortgage is paid? And this goes again with the kind of the affordability. If you are spending so much on your monthly mortgage payment that after you eat and after you pay other bills, you have very little money left to invest for your future, say you wanted to invest in a business, if you wanted to invest in your 401k, the stock market, your Roth, your retirement, there's no money left for that, then you probably should not be buying a house. That means your house is too expensive if you have no money left over to invest. So just make sure, that's a big red flag, because a lot of people are buying a house well above their means. So when you're doing your budget, and hopefully you're doing one, when you're doing your budget each month and you are calculating how much your mortgage payment would be, if there's no money left over to invest 10 to 15% of your income in the stock market, in Roth IRAs and other investment vehicles, then you probably don't need to buy a house. Number three, are you willing to stay in that home for 7 to 10 years? And this is a big one. If you plan on moving in the next 2 to 3 years, I had a person ask me that on one of my lives and said that they were probably going to live in their city for the next 2 years and were wondering if home ownership made sense for them. And I said, no, you probably should rent, because you have to make up some of the initial fees that are going to go into that home buying process. Some people really lucked out over the pandemic. I have a lot of people that bought in 2020, 2021, 2022, and were able to sell in 1 to 2 years and make a significant profit. But that is not normal. That's not the norm in the real estate market. You may increase with inflation, maybe 2 to 3%, or it may not have any growth. So you want to make sure that you're going to buy your house for the long term, 7 to 10 years. If you don't see yourself staying in where you are for that long, you probably don't need to buy right now. And number four, and I'm going to leave you with this one, is that a lot of these articles and YouTube videos will talk about the cost of home maintenance. So although I don't want that to scare you at all, because unless it's going to be some of the major components where you need a professional, things like your roof, your plumbing, your HVAC, your electric, and those things don't have to be done that often, a lot of the things that people didn't have access to, social media and YouTube and the internet and AI have given us a lot more resources to do a lot of these things ourselves, so they really don't cost as much as people are saying that things cost. You can mow your own lawn. You can paint your own house. You can do a lot of the things you're on your own, but you still want to be knowledgeable about, before you buy, you want to be knowledgeable about how much does it cost to replace your roof, and how often do you need to do it? How much does it cost to replace your heating and air system, and how often do you need to do it? So those kinds of things you want to be knowledgeable about, and make sure you have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months. I say up to 12 months if you're retired, or if you have an employment that is not as stable as some other types of employment. You may want to make sure you're saving for at least a year. But if you're fine with the 4 things that I listed, you should definitely be thinking about home ownership, because home ownership, along with other investments, makes sense for the long term.